serie.
Ja,
Geef je geen commentaar.
Ik ga het hard doen, maar ja.
Moet je er nog een paar schoon uitsluiten? Ja.
Oh, die in de. Maar ik vond het op de website.
Goedenavond, dames en heren. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, as well as non-binary friends. For everyone here, welcome. For the people at home confused why we're talking English, that's because our guest, Alex Huang, is not fluent in Dutch, so we'll be speaking in English. This will also be recorded for, not just for Volt Netherlands, but also for Volt Europe. So everyone who's listening or watching right now, what is this about? What are we going to do? Well, for one, this is the first in a series of lectures that we from Volt Rotterdam and Volt Netherlands are planning to organize, and this is the first one, so this is wonderful news, in terms of the theme of diversity and inclusions, as well as just bringing knowledge and wisdom, as well as different perspectives from ethnic, sexuality, religious, cultural, or other perspectives to the people who are interested and are members of Volt. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome our very first speaker, Alex Huang.
Yeah. Thank you for the introduction. I didn't know it was the first lecture, but it's a pleasure to be here, and it's great you're doing this at Volt. D&I is a very important issue, and I think it's a good start from the queer emancipation topic, because the Netherlands is actually really famous for it, but it also, as you mentioned, it transcends just gender and sexuality issue, and this is something that I will cover in this lecture. And we focus on the topic of homonormativity, homonationalism, and homocapitalism. And please keep in mind these are really big, complex topics and theories that could take days to explain or debate about, but I'll try to make it as practical as possible. But they are a good invitation to how complex these topics are and how intertwined it is with other diversity issues. So, a little bit about myself. I study governance, migration, and diversity master. I am a researcher as well in inclusivity, diversity, and specifically on Rotterdam's NGOs. So later on, I'll show you also what we do with this research, that we collaborate with a lot of different NGOs in Rotterdam, local ones, and I specifically work a lot with like Donadaria and like Cloud, these NGO that works with LGBT issues. I'm also a diversity project manager at Erasmus University, the faculty ESSB, so I do also engage with researchers a lot on this topic. And I am a queer Taiwanese migrant. I migrated to the Netherlands after graduating high school. I wanted to get away from my little town that's a little bit homophobic. I brought that. So when I started thinking about where do I want to move to, where do I want to migrate to, I immediately thought about the Netherlands because of its reputation of being very progressive and liberal, so I brought very high expectation when I save up money to come here. Of course, I'm very privileged, and I'm very lucky. I feel very thankful there is a lot of comparatively a lot of liberation and freedom here, but living here and actually being a bit more integrated in society, I experienced that it is a bit different for people like myself. The sexual liberation and freedom is a bit different for me, but it is a bit more prevalent for the natives, so-called natives. So without further ado, we can start looking at where are we now in progress in the Netherlands. So as we mentioned, actually it is the first country that legalized same-sex marriage. We had the first queer emancipation organization, COC, founded in the world. So yeah, in the 70s and the 60s, together with the feminist movement, yeah, the Netherlands, we are a role model in the world. But if you look at right now, in Europe, we ranked 13th in terms of LGBTQIA rights. Like, it's only in Europe, and there are, sorry.
Just a quick question. Who's at the top and who's at the bottom? Just my curiosity.
Oh yeah, this is Malta. It's a bit, yeah, it's a bit small. And at bottom is Azerbaijan.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, we were here, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe 10 years ago. And yeah, and last year's it was 14th, I think, even worse. And I don't like rankings, but I look at the indicators, they're quite reasonable. But then we have to question, why are we stuck in the 70s? What went wrong? And so these are some of the guiding questions we can ask ourselves before we go into the theory. Yeah, what is wrong? What policy gaps and legal gaps should be filled, and for what population within the LGBTQIA community? Also, a very important question is, this is very personal for me as well. What does it mean to be a queer person in the Netherlands, and how should I behave, or how do I fit in? And who is left behind in this process since the 60s and 70s? And who is the power, who is the ones that gets to shape the discourse, the discussion, and the legal rights? So, anyone has some thoughts on this already? We'll cover this later.
I do have a thought.
Yeah.
I'm Rain. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Yeah.
I come from the liberation period in the 70s and the 80s in the Netherlands, and I think a hypothesis I have is that as a white gay man, we felt we had achieved certain objectives and then forgot that there's so much more to be done. So yeah, I think it's got to do a little bit with privilege.
That is that's a very good argument. I didn't thought about it that way, but it's a very rich argument, I think, and very self-reflective in a way.
Yeah.
And I think privilege and also a bit of yeah.
Emancipation going in waves. Because if I look at my son is gay, and if I see he didn't even have an official coming out. This was not a non-issue at his school. So I think like there's a very progressive generation in the making.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe now we're on some kind of conservative wave, but hopefully it's getting better in a couple of years or so.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
That is true, but also it goes two ways. It's polarizing, we see.
Mm.
That's also very political in a way. Like, there's one side of the youth that experience these issues going very progressive, and they really want to fight. But then there's other going harder against. Actually, I'll show that in this slide. Is actually this weekend. Yeah, there was this weekend. I was in a protest. I took this photo, and the friend is a drag queen called Mama Queen. She's my friend, and yeah, like they do storytelling for kids at a library, and then they got very violent attacks from extremists. And then so they started, they started this from the right. They started this, protest, but the counter was bigger. like from our side. So it's you see a beacon of hope, but then from this photo you see these yeah, protecting white kids. They'll say it's quite observed, and it happened this weekend actually. It's
Just
yeah.
so I understand what I'm looking at, on the right, I see this pink lion. Was it an anti-demonstration from gay men?
Mhm.
That's how it started.
The gay servitude.
Yeah, I will talk about the gay servitors later, but they are against drag queens. Yeah.
I never heard of it.
It was last
There
year.
are
Only
only
two
two
person actually. There are two of them.
Yeah.
The roze label.
And they're in the picture there.
Yeah.
There.
But they were in all the papers. All the papers were carrying their statements.
Yeah, they were quite big 5 years ago in Rotterdam Pride. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it is also, I will cover this as well. The issue is also from within the gay community, especially from the white gays.
Like me.
You're very self-aware.
No.
But yeah, so but then, yeah. So reflecting on this, these are some of the main things that make the ranking so low for the Netherlands. Like, if you look at the indicators of that ranking, they look at legal rights and social acceptance and tolerance and asylum. So the Netherlands in general.
What are CSOs?
Oh yeah, sorry. Sorry, I need to stop using abbreviations. Civil society organizations and networks. So yeah, we do have a very strong civil organizations and sector working together for rights. And we have all the basics legal rights. And in general, there is a lot of tolerance in the society, more than 80% in the Dutch society. But, okay, acceptance is not tolerant. There's a difference. It's a very Dutch thing we tolerate, but we don't try to understand or accept it, and that leads to things just being swept under the rug. We don't.
I take offense with the word, with the claim that the Dutch are tolerant, because I think the Dutch generally don't give a fuck, and that's why they, as long as it's not in my backyard, I'll just ignore it.
It moves on, and that's also why progress stopped, because we don't talk about it.
Exactly.
We just shove it under the carpet and don't see it, and then it will yeah, it will come back at some point. It will yeah, and we also see that we have legal rights but not protection, especially for people who are non-white and transsexual people.
How do you mean lack of legal protection? How are you not protected?
So there's not a specific law that criminalizes like violence on the basis of sexuality.
Isn't that just like a hate crime, more general?
Yeah, but hate crime in the Dutch context is very, we have freedom of speech. It's a very thin line between, if you go to court, and then like there's always a long legal process of, okay, this is a freedom of speech or hate crime. But then why Malta, for example, and a lot of like countries on this list, they jump up because they amended laws to specifically protect LGBT persons from violence and hate crime, and it's a special law section, not just a general one. Yeah.
I think in Netherlands we're also pretty much focused on the first three letters of the LGBT community, like the trans communities and the other intersexuals. Those are the ones still a bit under the radar, I guess.
Yeah. You mean?
We talk a lot about gay, lesbians, and bisexuals, but
yeah.
The other sector of the LGBTQ community
Mm-hmm.
left out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'll talk about that through theory. Yeah, that's a good thing you pointed out. Yeah, I think I'll just jump right into the theory. Yeah, and also intersectionality is not at all a discussion in the Dutch debate. It's only, the policies are about very practical things like health, family rights, but then in today's age, we need to talk about the intersection of LGBT rights and other issues like race. And also socioeconomic status is a very important point. If you're generally an expat and you're not from the global south, you can enter and work here very easily and enjoy a very free life. But then if you are a migrant from less privileged, maybe migrant workers, you have very little rights, and also even for citizenship it's very challenging. So let's just go into the theory. Homonormativity. What is it? This big word, but what does it mean? You see a picture here of a typical, this is Neil's, and this is American gay celebrity. This is a typical normative way of how media portrays what a gay couple should look like, an ideal type of gay relationship. This is also very much prevalent in the Netherlands. Yeah, this we all want to be a bit more like the heteronormative lifestyle. That's the ideal type. You get treated as equals if you embrace that. And so that is what homonormativity in principle means, to have monogamous relationship, to be cisgender, to embrace the family values. You can adopt kids. So yeah, then if you are not falling into this category, you don't get treated as equals.
Does age also play a role? Like you can't have too much of a gap in ages in a couple? Or is that less considered?
Oh, that is not...
Like for
Ageism.
Ageism, so more like if a heteronormative couple, they're cisgender, they are, maybe they have good jobs, they adopt the children, etc. They don't commit crimes, they're, monogamous? But one of them is 20 years older than the other. Is that also part of the consideration of homonormativity or not?
That is because that is also in hetero couples, in a way. So, but that's actually something I can research about. Thanks for the tip. I'll note it down. Yeah, yeah. I haven't touched upon that actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to go into that because in the Netherlands, a famous Dutch singer, Bob de Nijs, got his last child at 63. And I think if you would have a gay couple being 63, adopting a child or taking care of a child, it would be perceived very weird.
It's even illegal.
It's even illegal, so I hear now. So I think age is definitely a factor, a variable.
But they say that to women of 40 years of age.
Yeah, but for men it's apparently...
I don't think Rob de Nijs got lots of praise for that.
Yeah, for a reason.
Yeah.
Because there's an age gap between men and women that is often accepted in one way, right? So men older than women.
Yes.
That is normal. And Macron is weird.
Yes.
Right? It's weird.
Yeah.
Weird. No, well. I wouldn't know.
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe that's also queer.
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting topic actually. Yeah. It is not very well researched yet. So we will work on that actually. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, but then so basically what falls here is not typically considered as a normative in the community. So yeah, these are the communities, the individuals that don't get treated equally, and consequently violence and discrimination. For example, the demonstration I just showed is a very recent example, and there's a lot of studies showing that in Rotterdam, the assaults against queer communities is usually on transsexuals. Also, it's good to mention that lesbians are the group that are not very visible in media and in public. So
What about bisexuals?
also they face a lot of discrimination from within the community. Yeah, because some people feel like it is not a real thing, even though it's scientifically proven it is a thing. But then, so this, I think bisexual, from a research perspective, is more also very much from within the community. But the gays, the male cisgender, remain the most powerful group in this whole spectrum. So it's important to keep in mind that,
Question, because queer is on there, and it's like this umbrella term, I guess. Maybe you could even say that all of the other letters are part of being queer.
Yeah.
So how do you explain that?
Yeah, queer is a recent, more, we don't use this term 10 years ago. It's because
It used to be questioning.
Because people use it more often these days to avoid this and the positionality, and so people who are a bit more sensitive in how they want to discuss each topic, they prefer to use the term queer, and that's why I also I introduce myself as queer, because I don't want to there's a lot of powers dynamic and structure in these, so using that is a safe way to, I don't know if it's the best way, but it's a safe way to avoid power structure and conflict in this group. So that's a good question. Let's go to the next topic, homonationalism. Very interesting term. What does it mean? It is a combination of homonormativity and nationalism. It is coined by Jasbar Poor in 2007, and originally this term is used to describe the U.S. government and Israeli discourse on pinkwashing and their pro-imperialist motives. So around this era, it is when homosexuality has been more visible, and then the government, they use, especially Israeli states, they make sexual liberation and progressiveness very dominant thing in the society, to separate their society with the rest of the countries in that region. That was the original definition of this term, but now it's used in a lot of different spectrums. Basically now it's is used to describe how homosexuality is connected to to national identity and being proud of the sexual progressiveness of a country. So the Netherlands, a lot of Dutch people would be very proud of, we're very liberal, we're very progressive, we're better than, for example, countries in the Middle East with a backward thought on sexual and gender issues. And therefore, this creates a bit of a position and positionality of othering other countries and people. So I'll talk about Pim Fortuyn later, but
Is he an example of homonationalism?
He is in a lot of literature that describe homonationalism, actually. Yeah, they mentioned he is a prominent example of homonationalism, as in he didn't invent the term, but then he embraces it, I think. Yeah, like Gloria Wecker is a very prominent anthropologist in my field. Yeah, she wrote this book called White Innocence, very relevant for D&I, so I really recommend it. But there's a chapter on, he used the term homonationalism, but he used, in the Dutch context, homonostalgia. Where did all the critical white gay goes? So it's describing the current state in that time, that there's a lot of gay people in the Netherlands missing the 70s and the 70s, the sexual liberation, the progression, without the migrants bringing their views and religion into the society. And this whole discourse has a very big influence from Pimford Town. He is back in the days an icon for a lot of white gay men. He's very public, very charismatic. He talks very publicly about his gayness and sex life. He lives in a mansion. He has a chauffeur. He has two really cute dogs. He's the epitome of a good gay life that people dreamed of in the past, and then he kind of made it all come true on TV and on reality. So people actually embraced this and believed in his statement that yeah, the Moroccans are the ones that are dragging our progress down, and we therefore should not welcome them. They should be not welcome to our community, the LGBT community, and also our country. And this rhetoric is still used in yeah, a lot of very right-wing politics. Yeah, just a few years ago, a lot of herb builders use the same rhetoric. A lot of white gays voted for PVV a few years ago, actually. So it is still a thing. It's a legacy that's going on nationally, but also in Rotterdam. Yeah, you see here, this is Rotterdam Pride in 2015. The gay conservatives are walking in the front, and that's Rotterdam Pride. That caused a lot of issues. Now the Pride organization are trying very hard to reshape this, but this is Pride a few years ago in Rotterdam. So it is very much a legacy, and is still a thing in the Netherlands. So yeah, why is it a problem then? Yeah, it makes people of color who are queer specifically facing a lot more violence and discrimination from the society, but also from within the community. So yeah, has been a lot of study done by NGOs already. For example, Down the Daria, they really focus on yeah, the bicultural queer kids from violence, also from the gay community towards them. And still in Rotterdam, we see a lot of stigmatization from either from the government or from yeah, in politics, stigmatizing the Zuid area, for example, and a certain population. We still use a lot of the data and statistics saying that, for example, the government, the gemeente published a report saying there's a high percentage of parents from Surinamese background not accepting yeah, LGBT people. Okay. Maybe it is true.
It sounds a lot like racism overall instead of discrimination.
Yeah, but then it is towards, especially towards people of color who are queer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So inside the LGBTQ community, the racism inside that community itself.
There's also, yeah, so it's from outside and from within a community as well.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of queer youth really suffer because, okay, they...
Can you just explain BIPOC?
Oh yeah, people of color.
Sorry?
Yeah, people of color, yeah.
But what's the I knew POC, I knew, but what's the
Oh, yeah. There's also biracial and interracial people of color. It's really, yeah, it's a really specific term, yeah.
I agree, we should get rid of all these acronyms.
Sorry, I'm bad habits of academics, yeah. So yeah, so there are a lot of youth suffering because they can't find a community in the city. They can't find a place where they feel belonging. So where do they belong? And that's a still very much Rotterdam problem and struggle.
Is that specifically something of struggle in Rotterdam or in every city?
A bit more prevalent because of how Rotterdam is a very diversity in terms of culture, but also because of how the areas and communities are a bit more segregated.
Here in The Hague, we are a very segregated city as well.
It is true, yeah.
And even more so than in Rotterdam. Do you think we have the same problems?
I think The Hague definitely has similar problem. Yeah, I don't do much research on The Hague, so maybe if you know, we can we can work on that. Yeah, I think there's
problems in the
yeah, indeed. So yeah, but then the problem is the stigmatization on areas and population. Does it make it better or worse? Because there are a lot of policy, they try to focus specifically on, okay, we need to address this issue and help kids from Moroccan background come out. But then it's also still stigmatizing a certain group. So it is a debate on what is the best approach, and we don't really know yet. We need to like really learn from what the community needs instead of just top-down policy and enforce on them. The next point is the asylum procedure. Yeah, this is the two reports that I analyzed, and I actually had the honor to meet the LGBT asylum support. It is the biggest asylum support service in the Netherlands, and they published a book featuring migrants going through the procedures. And I had the honor to talk with some of these asylum seekers, and they come here for sexuality and gender-based violence. They face very severe danger in their home country, and they come here to seek asylum. And some of the IND officers' statement was quite horrific in my opinion. Yeah, like there was a woman, she has kids, but then the IND officer keep asking, why do you have kids if you're a lesbian? She said, I was raped. And then they kept asking the same question. And also there was a literal transcript in this document of IND officer's statement on rejection. Most people who are still Muslim, who believe in, who still are not, they did not cut ties with their religion, they're rejected because in the states or the IND's point of view and opinion and official documents, if you're a Muslim, you are not queer if you're a Muslim, and this kind of it just shows that there is a state top-down definition of what being queer means in the Netherlands, and it does exist because they have a handbook to follow when they do the interviews, and these are some of the points they have to follow as IND officers. So, yeah, homonationalism is definitely a thing in the Netherlands. Let's jump to homocapitalism.
Oh, actually, I have a question for
Yeah.
one of the slides already.
Yeah.
With the book paper.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you can. You had a point where queerness was being a racialized theory, or maybe a slide, 2 slides earlier.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Racializing technology. What do you mean with that?
Oh, oh yeah. Sorry, I forgot this point. But yeah. So it is. It's used to create difference between race, as in, for example, just even within the community, the queer community, there is some class difference or power structure. Like the Moroccans are a bit
inferior.
Yeah. So and the white people have a bit more power and decision and the othering, and so it creates a power structure within the community.
Isn't
and
that intersectionality?
It is intersectionality, but also intersectionality is a more nuanced thing. But then this is an intentional approach or efforts to create.
Like the anecdote with the IND officer who said you can't be gay if you're still a Muslim.
Yeah. It comes from this, as in. If I am today, if I'm from Ukraine, asylum seeker, also coming from war, and I won't be asked these questions because I'm white, and I have this similar cultural background. But if you're a Muslim from Morocco, facing the same violence, you will be asked a lot of different questions, or not even granted citizenship at all. So it is an intentional, created, fabricated thing. That's yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the last one, the homocapitalism. So yeah, homocapitalism is also a incorporation of sexual diversity with capitalism. We did mention that homonationalism is also a very neoliberal approach to sexual politics, and homocapitalism, some call it rainbow capitalism, is very prevalent in our everyday life. Yeah, like if we think of the image of the gay people, the LGBT community, this is kind of the epitome of what we see, like the parties, the big parties on the canal prides. During Pride Month, all the companies put their logos into rainbow pattern, and then after the Pride Month, it's gone. Why? Because there are a bunch of very powerful gay people with a lot of power and connection and mobility that these power and corporations and even countries or cities want to attract. So basically, yeah.
What they call it, rainbow washing? Pink
washing. There's also there's also different author using rainbow washing as well. Pink washing, yeah. So it's different, slightly different meaning, but it's about the same thing. Yeah. So there's the emergence of the Globe Gays International. They travel a lot to meet other gays. Yeah, they they have a lot of purchasing power. Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's a typical. Yeah, that's a typical example. And then during Amsterdam Gay Pride, they're all in Amsterdam. During Tel Aviv Pride, they're all in Tel Aviv. Yeah, and then and Rotterdam wants to. Oh, this is, by the way, I saw this on. It's an archive of back in the 1990s or 80s. This has already been done. This is a KOM advertisement. Yeah, like Double Dutch with Dorothy. I may not be straight, but I'll be straight with you. This is an official advertisement from KLM. This is, you cannot find this online because it's an archive from a gallery. Yeah, and this is from Shell in the 80s.
I remember those when they came out. From
Oh.
KLM. Yeah.
And
I was
so it is
really
real, yeah.
proud
Yeah.
when they came out. But I guess that's part of your story is that I'm part of that, privileged group of.
No, I'm just trying to say.
homonormative gay men, I guess.
No, it's actually no. This is not a problem. It's been done already, and it's starting from the 80s and 90s, and by big companies, because they know it makes money, and then and this is done during the gay games in Amsterdam.
I was performing in a gay game.
Oh, nice, interesting. So you've seen this before.
But that was the first time that happened. That mainstream companies embraced it.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It really helped us then to get attention and to come out for who we were.
I think that is important for that time, but it's debatable if it's still in current times.
I agree.
Yeah, yeah. So it's this temporal aspect is very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, for example, Rotterdam is also trying to become a city like Amsterdam. Surprising. As in.
But also a lie. It's just not true. Rotterdam is not that gay friendly.
It's not. And then, on this website, I didn't put it, but when you scroll down, they put a bullshit index saying by Fitbit, the watch company.
What?
Saying that Rotterdam is the third gay friendliest city in the world.
What?
But by Fitbit, by the watch company, yeah, and then this is from the official website of Rotterdam Tourist Information. It's part of Rotterdam Partners, and
That's next level lying.
yeah, like, and then
That's pinkwashing.
yeah, that's pinkwashing, and but they see this, they want to attract this purchasing power and expats who are from this group to come live here, to travel here, because it brings money, and it fits with Rotterdam's vision of becoming this cosmopolitan city. Yeah.
The thing is, it has been done before. Also, I mean, famously, Singapore 20 years ago was inspired by this guy called Florida, about this book about the creative class. So Singapore also began to be more tolerant, because the idea is, if you are the place that gay people would want to move to, other creative expat types also want to move there.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so they want to have this, not just gay people necessarily, but if people who care about gay people being happy to be there. So Singapore officially also began to promote, like, oh, we don't mind anymore that much anyway.
Yeah, Singapore, yeah.
This was 20 years ago when Coach Tom began to say, oh, we don't mind in the civil service.
Yeah, but then they're still very legally.
Oh, the law was repealed a few months ago.
Yeah. Yeah, but then,
Yeah, this whole thing also with Pink Dot. I think Pink Dot, this is the kind of gay pride in Singapore because of laws. Because well, that's also a story, but they banned foreign sponsors because they only foreigners. They banned MSC because it's only for Singaporeans to cycle these topics, and then local companies began to sponsor them instead. And actually, it was a very powerful moment because it's, of course, companies doing the sponsoring, but basically they proved the government wrong, saying actually local companies also are gay friendly. It's not just those evil Western MNCs. But I think that case, just like I said, like in a certain moment in time, having foreign companies or having companies sponsor can be very helpful as a signal when you're in a weak position. But I guess then, as time goes on,
yeah, it's I think it's different in a sense.
Would it be better to characterize it as when you have no voice, the companies can give you a voice, but when there are multiple voices such as trans, queer, IA, etc., then having one large money-funded voice crowds out all the other voices. So you need a balance in the voices.
That's exactly the issue. Yeah.
To make Rotterdam or Hague or every city more gay friendly.
That's a question now we're gonna
talk
about. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But if you had it, what would you recommend?
I'll talk about that in a bit. Actually, I have a yeah. But yeah, that's an important point. But that's also an important point. Okay, we give these big companies a voice. They have a purpose to make money. So they empower even more the powerful already, and then the local trans people of color, they're left behind. They're not empowered even more. That's the issue here. Yeah. So yeah, let's get the key takeaways, and we can talk about the solution. Yeah. So we really have to really recognize that queer emancipation is not just about gender and sexuality. It's also about race. It's also about other forms of gender identity and expression. We have to go beyond that in order to make any progress, or we're just stuck in the 70s. Yeah, especially in Rotterdam, it is a very important issue, also in The Hague. Yeah, and also we have to remember it's also from within the community, not just from outside. This is something that we have to recognize. We have to be self-reflective in a way, also to not be afraid of criticizing gay people in a way. Just because they're gay doesn't mean that they
Are perfect human beings.
Exactly, and they don't yeah, and they don't relive the same kind of pattern that before they were oppressed. So yeah, it's a good example. Yeah, and we have all these global phenomenon like the Gay International that affects the local community, and especially the most marginalized people are pushed further away from any policy of support or resources. So those are the one we need to pay attention to. Yeah, and also remember that like the national policies that exist there already are not always in the best interest of the people who need support the most, like again, trans people, people of color, and those who are not very visible or vocal about their rights. So these are some of the key takeaways. I don't know if we have time for discussion.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I just wanted to for me, a very important takeaway that I'm experiencing is that homonormativity, homocapitalism, and homonationalism are actually backfiring on the community.
Yeah, that's
and they're stabbing us in the back. If I mean, I'm saying we, as in, you know, the privileged parts of the community, because that's ultimately what's going to happen. Is if you marginalize the others, then yeah, we're back to square one.
Hearing that from you, I'm very, I feel very relieved in a way that, yeah, it is exactly.
Well, that's what I'm taking away. That's
yeah,
what you've done to me.
well, that's exactly the problem that we're facing here. Yeah, like we need to be self-reflective and not using the same pattern to oppress others because we got our rights already. Yeah, and then so thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I have time for discussions, but these are some of the questions we can discuss. Yeah.
We have time to discuss.
Yeah? Yeah, we can just maybe in groups or pairs, we can choose one of the questions or any question you can think of.
Yeah, because it was we're not such a big group, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah?
we're
Digital questions left or not?
Oh yeah, is there questions? Or-
On the screen maybe?
Yeah, cuts out.
Oh, you're cutting out? Okay, well, in that case, I would like to first give you a gift for
Oh,
thanking you
thank
for being the first speaker here, as well
It's
as
my pleasure.
thank
Yeah.
you for the very interesting topics and teaching us all about very interesting and very important topics as well. Normally, gifts are wine, but that's not very accepting towards people who don't drink alcohol, or flowers, which would be bad for me because I'm allergic, stuff like that. So,
You got the essence of
Yeah.
DNI. Yeah. Yeah.
So we got you a notebook from the political party, but you don't have to use it if you don't want to. But also we got you. We got you something slightly more practical, which is something to use with the notebook, which is engraved pens with your name.
Oh.
So-
Oh wow.
So,
It's
and it's
fancy.
a Charles Dickens series, so it's a person who cared about others.
Thank you. It's my honor. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Okay, thanks.
I can put it back if you want.
Yeah.
You can